one of the co-PI of this project, Nahib Caste Anand Agriculture University. This indeed a great pleasure for me to be with you here on this webinar entitled Artificial Intelligence in Agriculture, and which is organized by Center for Agriculture Market Intelligence, Nahib Caste Anand Agriculture University. So in the beginning, I would like to request Dr. Aris Kundir, Professor and Principal Investigator of Nahib Caste Anand Agriculture University, for his welcome address and introductory remarks. So over to you, Kundir.
A very good morning to one and all. In this one-day online seminar on artificial intelligence in agriculture, being organized here at the Center of Agriculture Market Intelligence under NHP Caste, as Dr. Preeti already has briefed about the center. First of all, I would like to welcome my Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. R. Vyas Sahab. He is on the visit and shortly he will be joining us. He is always a source of inspiration, instructions, guidelines, and always very much interested, very much keen to know the progress of each and every activity of this project. So we welcome you, sir, and I think you will be joining shortly, and I had in touch of your secretary. So I also welcome our advisors, Dr. Prabhat Kumar from NHP New Delhi, and our principal and dean and office in charge, Dr. Vaishi Jhala, who will also be joining shortly, who have been part and parcel of this project since its inception. Also, more importantly, today we have with us our chief guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Durga Toshniwal, Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, and Head Center for Transportation System, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, Uttarakhand. Madam will be joining, and she's, I think, trying, and now shortly after this, maybe our introductory part. And we are here to listen this keynote address and to understand this very, very important and timely topic on artificial intelligence in agriculture. We all know that this area is not well explored, and so far limited application is there in agriculture at least. So we also have, I think, there are 7 groups in our this projects, and out of them one is on IT groups, and one of the activity or one of the research project which we are doing with the ISRO is on research on making projections with the help of use of satellite data and with the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is very, very important, and for most of us this is a new area, and we are here to understand these things with the help of the experts, and particularly from Dr. Durga Toshniwal through his keynote address, through her keynote address. And that's very nice for all of us, very important area. And also, I would like to welcome our organizing secretaries, Dr. Preeti Kumari and Mrs. Rucha Dave, who is also here, she has joined. And of course, to the core co-PI, Dr. Diyar Kathiria, our IT director, as well as core co-PI of this group. And of course, the joint organizing secretary, Dr. Y.A. Lat, core co-PI, and CCPI of our HR team, and organizing committee members, all Dr. Manoj Lonagaria, Dr. D.K. Parmar, Dr. C.R. Dudatra, Dr. M.R. Prajapati, and Mrs. Vishita Khani, all these team members, and most importantly, all the participants who are mainly the students and academicians, though apart from them, some other people, policymakers are also there, and more than 600 registration we got so far. This area is very important for us, all of us. As we told, that in this center, our major activities are centric to research and capacity building. In research, first major activity is on price forecasting, demand and supply. Second one in trade related activities, international trade, export, import, and the third one in marketing. And fourth one is maybe the commodities and farm producers organization. The first objective, which is very important, so we are having, as I told you already, that some partner institution like ISRO Ahmedabad, and our team is there. We are working with them. We are trying to understand this use of artificial intelligence in agriculture with the help of one project which we are trying to do, and to understand how we can make the robust or maybe the more precise price forecast with the help of this methodology, artificial intelligence in agriculture. though we have to go a long way. And this is, I think in this seminar also, 3 experts members are there, apart from our chief guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Durga Toshniwal. And we also have Dr. Santosh Rathod, scientist, Division of Transfer of Technology, Indian Institute of Rice Research, Hyderabad, and Dr. Parth Pratim Roy, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. So with the help of these presentation, which is very important to understand this area and its use in our professional life, in our research projects of artificial intelligence, this seminar is organized, and I'm sure that we all will get the benefit of rich experience and expertise of these all speakers, and particularly our chief guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Durga Toshniwal. With these things at our end, I would hand over to Dr. Preeti. Preeti, over to you if madam has joined. Otherwise, you can ask the participants to wait for a few minutes. Once again, I welcome all the dignitaries, all our the staff members associated with this webinar, and all the participants. Over to you, Preeti. You can wait if madam is about to join. You can wait and we can.
Ma'am has already joined.
Okay, that's fine.
So thank you so much, sir, for your modest words and giving an insight on this particular project. So, dear participants, due to some busy schedule, our Vice Chancellor won't be able to join us. So, give me some time to highlights importance of this particular webinar. As we all know that agriculture is the most important profession all over the world, and primarily important for the country like us, India, where agro gross domestic product can be considered as a growth engine for the economy. So efficient productivity would provide a better way to transform our agriculture. So there are millions of strategies we have adopted till date to improve efficiency of our agriculture scenario. But agriculture intelligence or artificial intelligence is one of the topmost strategy nowadays, which can help farmer and scientists to analyze the information in the form of data related to every aspect of crop. For example, like AI technology help farmer optimize planning to generate more yield by determining crop choices, the best hybrid seed choices, and resource utilization. So these days, farmers are also using AI to create seasonal forecasting model to improve agricultural accuracy and increase productivity. So AI-based model are able to predict upcoming weather pattern, which is very important for decision making for a farmer. So seasonal forecasting is particularly valuable for small farms in developing countries, as their data and knowledge can be limited, and keeping these small farms operational and growing yield is important, as these small farms produce 70% of the whole world crops. So in addition to the ground data, farmers are also taking to the sky to monitor the farms, and in that case, computer vision and deep learning algorithm process data captures from drone flying over the field and analyzing images in the real time to identify problems in the areas related to that particular field. So those drones are able to cover far more land in much less time than we humans do in the reality. So fortunately, the use of AI will allow farms to all sizes to operate and function, keeping our world fed. So you all have heard about precision farming, the word precision farming, which is one of the fastest growing AI-enabled application in agriculture. So it helps farmers to minimize cost and optimize resources. So precision farming basically uses AI for data collection, interpretation, and analyzes digital data. So keeping importance of these things in mind, this webinar is basically organized to know the techniques, those techniques which can be useful for agriculture and its agriculture-based market also. And since due to time limitation, only few, since this is a one-day webinar, so only few of the techniques or methodology we will cover in this webinar. and I hope you will get benefited by the end of this program. So, invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. R.V. Vyas, for his presidential address. So, please, sir.
Thank you, and good morning, one and all. Thank you, Priti Kumari. And I would like to say that after hearing Madam Durga, she has covered almost all aspects of artificial intelligence. I have no words to further supplement. But I think her keynote address has given or enlightened us about what are the new avenues we can think for. And we can go ahead with our students, especially postgraduate students, and teach them how to go ahead having more and more all the technology of AI in agriculture sector. As the farmer face these days many problems like climate variation, infestation of pests and diseases, weeds, and also improving their soil health and crops. And to face this problem, we have to try these all technologies pertaining to AI, and especially this NAHEP project, which we have at Anand Agriculture University. In this project, we should have market database and market forecast of the prices, as well as international scenario is also to be supplemented with our research efforts. And in these efforts, I think whatever the database we are generating, that can be easily taken care with these AI technologies. I can say that very recently our Minister of Agriculture state from Delhi came to Anand, and in our nearby university Charusat, he has opened one AI center, and one donor has given big fund for this research. So this shows the interest of government also in the AI technologies to be promoted in agriculture sector. The need is to develop more and more technology awareness and understanding of technologies to our student and the faculty, especially the young faculties who have joined recently. And we have a big team of research fellows and associates in NAHEP project. About 22, 23 people, young people are working on this project. They should be much aware of this all AI technologies. Of course, I can say in a one line that if we can have AI information, satellite-based data, and software like Python and other software in agriculture domain, we can do wonders. And for these wonders, we have to work very hard and collectively, involving all the discipline, agriculture, veterinary, dairy science, and I can say our the College of Information Technology of AIU. So all college staff and student should work together and adopt this all AI technologies. I think we will be able to serve our farming community in Middle Gujarat very well. With these few words, I wish you all a very successful this webinar. I'm sure that the knowledge shared by Madam Durga and a few more speakers are still going to deliver their speech. I think you will learn a lot, and we can implement this in a big way in our university. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Vyas.
sir. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your thought-provoking address with us, sir, and making time in spite of your busy schedule. So, on behalf of our entire team, I thanks to you sincerely. And now we are at the end of this inaugural session, and let me take this opportunity to thank one and all. So to begin with, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. R.V. Vyas, sir, our first gratitude is due to you for your excellent presidential address and also sparing time to grace the occasion in spite of your busy schedule. Thank you, sir, for your address. And my deep sense of gratitude goes to our chief guest, Dr. Durga Toshniwal, for accepting our invitation and consenting to deliver her lecture in this webinar and sharing some of her experience, like how this particularly AI, deep learning, machine learning, and IoT technique could help to transform the scenario of agriculture. So thank you so much, ma'am. And also, I would like to thanks our two of speaker, Dr. Santosh Rathore and Dr. Parth, for giving his consent to come to delivering his lecture in this webinar. And I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to Dr. R.C. Agarwal, DDG Education, and National Director Nahib Caste ICR New Delhi for his valuable support and guidance as and when we required. We are extremely grateful to you, sir. I would like to thank Dr. Prabhat Kumar, sir, National Coordinator Nahib Caste, for his encouragement continuously to our team. So thank you very much, sir. I also would like to express my thanks to Principal and Dean IABMI, Dr. YC Jhala, who is always providing his boundless help to us. And we are really thankful to you, sir. And apart from it, I extend my most sincere thanks to Dr. Iris Pundir for giving very interesting as well as brief of us and for inspiring mentorship, sir. I'm very much grateful to Dr. Kathiria, who have given his precious time in organizing and making this event successful and the uninterruptedly boosting us to reach at our goal. So thank you very much, sir. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation to my organizing secretary, Rucha ma'am, and joint organizing secretary, Lars sir, Dr. Y.A. Lard, for their untiring support and help. And also, I sincerely thanks to all the faculty members and staff members of Nahib Caste who have contributed directly or in any way to make this event successful. And also, thanks to Bhavik, Ayushi, Neerav Smith, Kripa to put their endless effort and greatly helped me to organize this particular event so efficiently. So thank you so much. We are really grateful to one and all. So thank you. Now we are entering into our first technical session.
I think before leaving, just thank you, Professor Pundir. Thank you, Professor Vyas, and Dr. Preeti. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We will look forward to your guidance, ma'am. Okay, so we will start with our first technical session now, and which is on hybrid time series modeling in agriculture using machine learning technique. And we have with us, for that, we have with us Dr. Santosh Rathore. So please allow me some time to introduce him first. Dr. Rathore is presently working as scientist in the Division of Transfer of Technology, ICR, Indian Institute of Research, Rice Research, Hyderabad, since 2018. And before that, during the span of 2014 to 18, he was at Indian Agricultural Statistics Research Institute, ISRI, New Delhi, as a scientist in the forecasting division. And about his education qualification, he has done his PhD from Banaras Hindu University in the year 2017, and master's from US Bangalore in the subject of agriculture in 2011, and he did his graduation from US Dharwad, Karnataka in 2009. His area of specialization includes statistical modeling and forecasting of agriculture system, modeling of biological and biometrical data, genomic selection, and machine learning and optimization. Further, he has backed more than 10 research projects to his career, funded by ICAR, and published more than 30 research papers in national and international journals, and also presented 15 research papers in national and international conferences. Further, he has conducted 6 trainings in the area of statistical modeling and forecasting. And Dr. Rathore has also received Young Scientist Award of Indian Society of Agriculture Statistics in the year 2017. So having such a broader experience in the area of forecasting, it will be a big plus for all of us to hear you, Dr. Rathore. Though There are many things we have in common, like Dr. Rathor and I have completed our respective PhD from same institution under the same guide, and our research area is also somewhat same. But there are some uncommon points which I also want to highlight, that he is the brightest candidate since I have seen him, and in many way, even being my junior, he has inspired me a lot. So it is a great pleasure for me to hear you once again, Rathor. So over to you.
Good morning, all. Thank you, ma'am, for your nice introduction. You was introduced me more than what I am, and thank you, ma'am. And I also would like to thank Dr. Pundir sir for the invitation, and the Anand Agriculture University, and Preeti ma'am, and all the co-organizing committee. So then we'll start the session. So shall I share the screen, ma'am? I will share my slides. Yeah. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll begin the session. Since this topic is very broad spectrum, as they said, it is artificial intelligence applications in agriculture. So as the name suggests, artificial intelligence is intelligence apart from the natural intelligence, right? So we'll see in this lecture how we can apply this artificial intelligence as a specific to the time series modeling. So I heard that the audience are all agriculture graduates and postgraduates. So now I start with the what is the data and little. I will not speak about the agriculture since all of you are from the same domain. I will directly begin with the data and the statistics, right? And so in the coming slide, so my schema presentation will be time series analysis. Then what are the popular linear time series models? Then what are the popular machine learning time series models? Then how we can go for hybridization? Then some examples, and what are the references we have to refer for the next further research, right? So coming to the data, as all of you know that data, anything which is represented in the numerical form is data. So in our research and in all our areas of working, what we do is usually we generate the data from either experiments or survey or published sources, right? So like that, we have different kind of data. Then we have time series and spatial data, and the mixture of both spatial temporal and space-time data. So time series like temperature data, for example, temperature or rainfall, any data. So I will give the example as for today's temperature, it depends on yesterday's temperature, day before yesterday's, and so on. So the data should be like today's temperature should depend on yesterday's temperature. It means there should be a dependency among the data. So those data we call it as the time series data, right? The yield data, then weather, then your disease data. All these data are dependent on their past. So these data we called as a time series data. Coming to special data are, as I say, times are dependent. In this special data, we see that the space or locations are dependent. For example, the temperature of your Anand Agriculture University depends on the temperature of the neighboring site. Again, it depends on the site which is behind the some more neighboring site. Like that, the spaces are independent. So these data we call it as the spatial data. And like that, we have combination of spatial and temporal data. For example, the temperature depends on time as well as the locations around the Anand Agriculture University. These data are called as a space-time data. In this lecture, what we will do is I will see what are all the models which are applied in, popular models which are applied, which are commonly employing in time series and as well as spatial temporal modeling, and how we can go for hybridization of such models, right? So to define the time series formally, a data set containing observations on a single phenomena observed over multiple period of time. As I explained, today's temperature depends on yesterday's temperature, day before yesterday's, and 3 days back, like that. Then, as I said, important properties of such data are the successive observations under considerations are dependent. It means they should have the autocorrelation. Auto means self correlation, right? Then it is generally believed that at least 50 observations are necessary to perform time series analysis, as stated by Box-Jenkins, who were pioneers in the time series model. It is not hard and fast, but in the most of the examples, at least 50 observations are based on the permutation and combination, the standard is that 50 observations are always better for the minimum of 50 observations always better for time series modeling. Even though we have the models which are works in very less observation, like in 10-15 observations, we have gray models and support vector machine and all, but it is always recommended to use at least more than 50 observations, right? Then coming to the time series, we have 4 components in time series. There are trend, then cyclical, seasonal variations, and irregular components. Trend usually occur for over 1 or 2 years, like trend of the yield or trend in the temperature or trend in the rainfall and all. Then we have cyclical, which is a fluctuation over a long period of time. Then we have seasonal variations, which are we call them as a variations which occurs due to seasons, like your quarterly data or your monthly data in the temperature or any time series data. Like we have irregular components. These are the components which are occurs due to your flood or some unplanned activities. These components are also included in the time series modeling, right? Then as a classical, the classical time series models, we used to just use moving average and exponential smoothings. There are different kind of exponential smoothing moving averages in single moving average. Moving average means as you move on to the next time, the average will be next time or next day, the average is going to change. We are leaving the first observation, we are considering the second, 2, 3, 4, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. So the single moving average will be used for the constant value. It is depend on the immediate. For example, the today's temperature depends only on the yesterday's temperature. Then we can see the trend by using the single moving averages, right? Like that we have double moving averages. This 2, 3, 4, then if it's 4, 5, 6, then 8, 9, 10, like that. So double moving averages are used for linear and quadratic trend. And then we have exponential smoothing for most recent observation, and no trend is no trend and no seasonality components are considered in this. Sorry. Like that, we have different models: single moving array, double moving arrays. Then these are all the based on the whatever the seasonal, these 4 components present in the models, time series data. These 4 models are used. So coming to next, as I said, in the time series they should have the autocorrelation. For this, to test the autocorrelation, we have the test called box Pierce test. So if the box Pierce test comes significant, then we can say yes, the time series under consideration in the autocorrelation, and we can go for the further modeling, right? Then we for the time series we assume one more thing, that the data under consideration should have follow the stationary process. It means when you divide the time series into, for example, you have 50 observation and you divide the time series into 5 parts. All the 5 parts mean and variance should be constant. It should not be heterogeneous. When you see the variance with the Bartlett Cascade test, it should follow the homogeneity. Then we can say the process under consideration is stationary process. To test with the statistics, we have AD, augmented Dickey-Fuller test. So if this test satisfies this stationary process, then we can further go for the modeling. If the series under consideration is not stationary, then we have some criteria to overcome that. We have differencing. We can make the first differencing, then we can go for second differencing, like that. Then we can convert the series into the stationary series, from non-stationary to the stationary series, and we can go for the time series modeling, right? And you have to understand, as I said, this time series and regression, the major difference is, in regression, we assume that the observation under consideration should be independent in nature. But in time series, we always assume that observation under consideration autocorrelation. So to begin with, if when you get to any data set in your hand, first we have to test the nature, characterize the data. Like we have to see the plot, whether it is following linear or non-linear. Then we have to see whether it is a series is correlated, multi-correlated, all those things. If series comes as if series follows some autocorrelation among the data, then we have to go for the time series model, right? Okay, these are all the basics of time series. In which if you have any doubt, you can ask. Otherwise, you can ask me at the end also. Then, as I explained the linear time series, since it's a hybrid modeling, so first we'll discuss about the popular linear time series models, and then we discuss about the non-linear models, right? So to begin with the linear time series models, as maybe some of you know that ARIMA model is the most popular model for in the linear time series model. It is in the univariate time series modeling, often referred as a mixed model, as a combination of autoregressive and moving average components. Autoregressive means, as I said, today's temperature cause some variations in the tomorrow's temperature. That is autoregression, right? And moving averages, it is used for usually the difference between the actual and predicted error terms. And moving average, as I said, it is a average. It is not a constant average. It is a moving average shifting from one point to next point, right? And ARIMA model is the most popular model. And if you have the moving average as if you do not have moving average component in your model, this model is termed as the autoregressive model. And if you do not have the autoregressive component in your model, then this model is termed as a moving average model. And if you have both, and if a series is non-stationary, and you convert the series to the stationary series, then the differential term is I, and we call the model as a autoregressive integrated moving average model. If you see any time series papers, the first model people use is ARIMA model. So this is the most popular and most common model in the time series, right? And yeah, and once to finalize the model like ARIMA model we are using, then we have some steps on how to build the model. First, as I said, first we have to see the autocorrelation. I mean, if the data series under consideration are autocorrelate or autoregressive, then only we have to go for the modeling. Then for that we have the test box based test. Then second step is stationarity. Stationarity, as I said, the mean and variance divide the series into different parts, and it should be constant. Then we have to go for this stationarity. Series under consideration is not stationary, then we have to go for the differencing, either first or second differencing, and then we have to convert the series into non-stationary to the stationary, and then we have to go for the modeling. And then we have the identification. Like in ARIMA also, as I said, see, you can see this equation. Here you have the subscript as a P, and here as a Q, right? This has the subscript as a P, D, Q. P is your autosegregation order, and Q is your moving average order, and D is the order for the integration, right? This difference in term. So we have to decide whether AR, for example, AR2 means this today's temperature depends on day before yesterday's. I mean 2 lakhs. And the moving average means like the difference is second difference. I mean the averaging is the second averaging, right? So like that we have to decide the order first. So to decide the order, we have the graphical graphs to identify the order. Like we have ACF and autocorrelation function and partial autocorrelation function. The ACF is used to identify the order for the moving average term, and PACF for the PACF for the this AR order, right? So what you can see here in the this first plot ACF, there are one significant spike. You see here the first spike is significant, and in the second this PACF you have at the second lag the spike is significant. You can say it is the order of 2, 1. Like that you can identify the order. Though it is a like a very it is a graphical bird's eye view. It's a graphical this one. So to be specific, we have the criteria like AIC and VIC, Activity Information Criteria and Base Information Criteria. It calculates based on the error of the model, and whichever the model order giving the lowest AIC and VIC, those models we consider as a best order. Okay. So once the model order is identified, the next step is to estimate the model. So to estimate the model, we have our most popular and most common estimation methods. We have OLS and maximum likelihood estimation methods, right? So I no need to explain about OLS and ML. This is a very basic. You can read also. So this and some people, if ML and OLS also has some assumptions. If some assumptions are violating, some people use some as earlier speaker mentioned genetic algorithm. If the violations are assumptions are violated, we can use genetic algorithm, particle sum optimization, and ABC algorithm, and many more machine learning algorithms. In one of our publication, we have used genetic algorithm for forecasting the maize yield. Like that, you can also estimate your parameters using different algorithm, and it is going to be your new finding, and you can exploit this estimation methodology for any time series beginners, right? So once the model order is, models are estimated, then our next step is diagnostic checking. This is the most important steps in the model building, and most of the model builder are our agriculture scientists are all we people used to neglect this step. Like after fitting the regression model, we never bother about the error term. We always assume that error follows normal distribution. But most of the cases, as the agriculture process becoming complex nowadays, the most of the time the error terms are error terms are non-random. It means if it is non-random means the error terms are having some information remained in the error terms. It means that information is we are not considering in the model for the prediction. This information has to be taken in the model by using the means of, as the topic suggests, the hybrid modeling. So if the error terms are significant, then we can utilize those information in our model. Okay, we'll discuss those in next step. Then all these things satisfy, then finally we go for the forecasting, right? So if you still now, if you have any doubt, you can ask in between. Or if it is clear, then I can move further. Preeti ma'am, shall I go further?
Yes, Rathod.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Okay. And then we have some models called as Arifima model for long memory series. As the name Arifima means autoregressive fractionally integrated moving average models. And if you see the ARIMA model, you see the within a first or up to 12 lakhs, we have many significant spikes. Right? It means there is no specific pattern, right? The series, it means the series are short memory. It means the today temperature depends only on some 2 or 3 days back temperature, right? These series are called as short-term time series. And some of the series, if you see here, this is one data set I taken from the tree. This is a tree ring data. In see these data are in year, and you see the tree rings. When you take any big trees in the forest, and these rings are 300. I mean, it means the ring formed in today that depends on 300 years. Like our, I think it is this one 300. So like that, the data which are dependent are very fast. I mean, very long lag. It means they are exponentially decaying. Not fast, they are decaying very slow. You see here, this graph, this PHA plot, very slowly they are decaying, and they are decaying at 200 or 200 lag, right? It means 200 years. Like that, we have used some in our one of our studies. I used some mustard price data. They are having the lag of 65 days. It means the today's mustard price is depending on 65 days back price, right? Those under such condition we cannot use our ARIMA model. So we have to use the model called as long memory models, and under the long memory model, you have the Arifima is the most popular model, and you see the D here in our ARIMA model. There also we have integration I, and which always we take as a I difference equal to 1, 2. It means we take integer difference 2, 3, 4, right? And here we take, you see the D is ranges between 0 to 0.5. What we do is we take the difference as a 0.5, 0.3, 0.4. This is the only difference in Arifima model, right? And this Arifima, if you have any doubt also, you can ask whenever you get the doubt in the Arifima model. Arifima model is introduced by Granger and Joyce are explained as follows. It is almost same model, only thing is difference is this fraction one, right? And a model building as for any time series models, again the same step, autocorrelation with the box based test. And this is the most important long memory testing, where we see that whether once the series is under consideration is found that it is a long memory, then only we go for Arifima model. For that, we have the test rescaled range test, that is RS test. R is the range and S is the standard deviation, and we have the formula for that. And if the D comes between 0 to 0.5, you can say the series under consideration has a long memory, then we can go for a long memory model, right? And again, the stationary, then identification using AIC, BIC, then estimation, we use this maximal likelihood. And this GPH estimation is the most popular in Arifima modeling, where GPH is the extension of, again, this machine learning, that is quasi-maximum likelihood estimator. And this is two-step estimation procedure. Then once the model is estimated, we have to go for the diagnostic checking as a box-based test. And as I said earlier, also this is the most important step, right? Then all the criteria are satisfied, and we have to go for the forecasting. Okay, if this thing is clear, then we'll move to the next slide. Next model, that is spatiotemporal models for STERMA models for spatiotemporal time series. And this is the, this work we started the first time in ISRI, and I joined as our head. We discussed and we proposed a project on this work, and this is you can find very minimal applications of STERMA models even for from India also. I can say this is our novel work, and we started in ISRI, spatio-temporal time series modeling. If you see, if you type in Google spatio-temporal, like some people they use space separately, and some if you're using only space, then they use regression Kriging model. If they are using only temporal, they use ARIMA time series model. But you find very less papers where both space and temporal time series are used. Those series are called as spatio-temporal time series. And for this, I got the award also, as Madam said. And we have communicated. And in this work, one of our students got PhD also, and we published one good paper in Theoretical Climatology Journal. So this is, I can say, this is a feature in the time series. So anyone of you can interested in concentrate on this. As I said, the time series models lack in both space and time, or we call it as a space-time interpretation moving array. That is TERMA models. Only thing is here, if you see the STARMA, only ST is different here. Space-time. It is almost same as ARIMA model. Only thing is that we are adding the space component in our univariate ARIMA model, right? So if you see the model expression also, you see W is only different here. See this W, and here also W. So we are adding W weight in the both in our autoregressive component also, in your moving average components also, right? And the trick involved in this spatio-temporal model building is our weight matrix only. How you give the weight? For example, as I said, the temperature of Anand Agriculture University depends on the neighboring sites, say 1, then site 2, 3, 4, all 8 or 9 sites, right? Then how much weight you assign for all the 9 sites? Whether you assign equal weight, whether you assign the weight based on the distance, or whether you have some criteria to assign the weight, or you have some biases toward the weight for the particular location, like that. So this in turn, this depends on how you assign the weight. In turn, this leads to the accuracy of the model, right? So this is about the spatio-temporal. If you want any specific thing, I have some papers that you can read, and just a highlight move to how to build the model, right? So as I said in earlier two models, where we see the autocorrelation, here also we have multivariate box Pierce test for see the spatio-temporal correlation. First thing in a spatio-temporal modeling is spatio-temporal time series modeling is you have to see whether the series under consideration is spatially dependent or not. There should be a correlation among the spaces, correlation between Anand Agriculture University and the neighboring site. That should be most important in the spatio-temporal modeling. If it is significant or it is satisfied, then we can go further. And as I explained in earlier slide, stationarity, then the building of special weight matrix is the most most important. The commonly used special weight matrix till now is uniform weight. This also we used in our paper. Our one of paper equilibrium distance also we use. KNN based we propose, and this also we use. Fuzzy logic, one of my student used this one, and correlative weights are we are using. There are many people they define weights in the different way. And the spatio-temporal modeling, TERMA model is commonly used in this, traffic control forecasting in US and UK. They, as the spaces are this traffic in this particular area may lead to the traffic jam in some other area. So these things are most commonly used in US and UK for traffic control in their advisories, right? And then to identify, then how to identify the model? To identify the model, we have AIC, identify the model orders. We have AIC, PIC, then AC. Instead of AC, PIC, here we have space-time autocorrelation function and space-time partial autocorrelation function, right? And coming to the model estimation, we have this maximum likelihood estimation, which is most commonly used. And one in our project, we have used this GAPSO. We are first time proposed these algorithms in GAPSO. This paper is under communication. And we proposed this TERMA GA and TERMA PSO models. We estimated the model parameters with PSO and GA, right? Then once all these steps satisfied, then we go for diagnostic checking. But also we have the multivariate box Pierce test. The residuals are non-random and they are independent. Then we can go further for the forecasting, right? And as I said, the weight building is most important. I will just explain in 2 minutes how we can give the weightage. For example, I is my site of interest, that is my Anand Agriculture University, and this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This my yellow color one are my nearest neighbor. They are just their border is shared, right? And this blue color are border shape to the next border. I mean they are. This I call it as a first lag, and this is my second. Blue is the second lag, and yellow is yellow is my first lag. So like that, if you see here, in one of our studies, we used Karnataka's temperature data. This is my map 1, 2, 3. I named the location as up to 9. And if you see for first location 1, 2 and 8, yeah, this 2 and 8, they are shared the common border and they are their first lag. Okay, and this is my first first order special arithmetic, and this second one is the second table is the second order special arithmetic. You see, for the second location Bijapur, I assigned the weight 0.5. It means 1 by 2. Since I have two weights here, 1 by 2 and 1 by 2, 0.5. And in the second order, I have 3, 6, 7. 3, 6, 7s are common borders. I mean second borders. So 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, 1 by 3, 0.33, 0.33, 0.33. Like this is a uniform weight building, and like that you can build the weight. So this is just an overview. If you are more interested, you can go through this Starmer modeling. So okay. Just okay. These three are most common linear time series model in different aspects of time series in short-term memory, long-term memory, and spatio-temporal memory, right? And coming to the machine learning, I mean artificial intelligence. This is the most important topic of today's talk. So artificial neural network is the most fundamental and the first innovative model in machine learning. So we'll in next slide we deal with the machine learning techniques, time series models, right? Okay. See, as Madam said, artificial intelligence is the field of science that creates a machines or devices that can mimic the intelligence of the behaviors. Like artificial intelligence means mimic the human brain. For example, medical diagnosis, electronic trading, robot control, and remote sensing. Then models are group of algorithms comes under the AI techniques, right? And then we have machine learning, which is a subcomponent of artificial intelligence, and that provides the computers with the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed anytime. Once it is learned the algorithm, next time no need to program again the same program. It will based on the data under consideration. It will learn itself and it will do the modeling. Machine learning techniques are data driven or they are phenomena based or component based approaches, right? Okay. And when it comes to the machine learning, which is a field of the computer science that gives the computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed every time. This definition was given by Samuel. He is one of the pioneer computer program, and he started a self-learning program for the first time. And yeah, he called them the checkers learned theorem. And the machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence techniques which use statistical methods to enable machines to improve the experience. This means that the machine learning is combining programming, probability, and statistics. Earlier, people used to call machine learning or artificial intelligence, and it was in a new domain. People used to call it as a black box. Like we are not understanding what is doing inside, but it is not at all like that. Machine learning involves a lot of probability and statistics, how we do the weight and all. So, right? So we can say machine learning is in total we call it as a statistical machine learning. If you involve any probability or any weight assignment or any distribution, we can call it as a statistical machine learning programming, right? Yeah, you can see the clear difference here. Artificial intelligence is the output, and the machine learning is the engine. Like in your car, your engine is your machine learning, and artificial intelligence is your product, right? This is the major difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay. So coming to the learning, when we can say one person learned, a computer program is said to be learned from experience E with respect to some class of task T and performance measure like RMSE and all in measures in terms of T. If its performance at task T as a measured by P improves with the experience E, right? This is a this we can say learn. What is learn means? We can say this definition, right? Under learning, we have three kind of learning. One is our supervised learning, one is unsupervised learning, then reinforcement learning. Good. Supervised learning means it is a teacher-student learning where you have the formal classroom and teacher is guiding and students are learning. So in this, we have input vectors and we have the target vectors also. Like in the temperature data, you give some target that today's temperature is 35 and tomorrow's prediction will be 36 degrees Celsius, and my model should predict the temperature which is near to 36 degrees Celsius. That is target vector, and this is called as supervised learning, right? And second learning is unsupervised learning, where you learn yourself and you do the prediction. That is self-study, learning from own experience. For example, you have 50 observations. The 50 observations you divide them into training and testing. It means the 90:10 or 80:10 ratio. That 80% of the observation you use for your study purpose, and remaining 20% observation you use for the validation purpose. Such models we call is unsupervised model, and this is the most common kind of modeling we use in the machine learning in our time series classes, right? Then we have reinforcement modeling, which is a combination of both supervised and unsupervised learning, where some of the part you learn from your target set or your teachers, and some of the part you learn from the data set and you do the model. This is, very less applications, and most of the time we use unsupervised learning only. And coming to the types of machine learning, we have classification and regression problem. And data mining, some people they divide data mining as a separate class. As keynote speakers, he said they used machine learning for the disease diagnosis and all, which comes under the data mining, right? So, but with in the broader sense, we can call that as a classification. So inputs are divided into 2 or more classes, and pattern recognition, data mining. These are all the classification data. And the major class, the next class is the regression. They used to map the data to a real value prediction variable. So our time series also comes under the regression class of machine learning, where we have a different kind of model, like we have linear model, polynomial, and nonlinear, and many more, like our complex models, right? Sorry. Okay. So as I said, artificial neural network is the most popularly used machine learning technique in this machine learning technique in time series modeling or any classification or any regression problems. So artificial neural network is a computation device that is inspired by the structure as well as the functional aspects of biological neural network, the human brain especially, are a neural network made out of various interconnected simple processing elements called as a neurons or nodes. So I will show you the diagram, and it works almost like a human brain, where you have neurons, synaptic weights and all. It is estimated that brain is composed of around 10 to the power 11 neurons that work in a parallel. And since the processing done by neurons and memory captured by synapses are distributed together over the network, so our human brain is much more stronger than our artificial neural network. So it is 10 to the power 11 neurons we have, but in our time series model we hardly use, based on our data we use some neurons, right? I'm sorry. Okay, and this is our this we can say this is our human neuron, where our dendrites, and this we call them as the inputs. These are my inputs, comparing it to the time series x1 to xn, and then I have cell body. It is in neural network language we call it as the activation function, and then it processes the information here and it will give the output, and this output again act as input for the next neuron or any next model also, right? So this mimic the human brain. So dendrites, the entry points in each neuron, which takes input from the other neurons in the network in the form of electrical signals. Then you have cell body, it is like activation function, which process the information and send the information to the next neuron, that is output function, that is axon terminals, right? So this behave like a artificial neural network. And we can say the first neural network model was proposed by McCullough and Pitt. They called it a threshold gate. So in the year 1943, they proposed this model, and this model was consist of the 2 stages. First is the input, and next is as the output, and aggregation function in the between. But they call it as a 2 parts model. That is, G takes the input, performs aggregate. The aggregation performs in input only, and this gives output as a F, right? And I will just 1 minute I will explain about this McCullough-Pitt. For example, when there is a IPL matches, we can see how we can take a decision. For example, in IPL match is going on, I want to watch the IPL, right? So to watch the IPL, I will say how many teams are there, 12 teams, and which is the which is my favorite team, and whether this is my one option, whether I have to go watch if the match is between RCB and Delhi, whether I have to watch this match, or there is a match between Mumbai and Hyderabad, whether I have to match that watch. This is two possible inputs and inputs. And one more input X3 is, yes, I do not have any work at home whether to watch or not. And the X5 is, I have some other work in the office whether I have to stay and watch or not. These are all my inputs, and I can take this and I will sum this all inputs X1, X1, X2, X3, and then I will decide, yes, if my threshold function that sum goes behind 2, then only I will watch the IPL, otherwise I will not watch. So these kind of decisions, based on this nature of the decision, this model has come into the picture. This we call it as the Michelin-Pitts model. This is the first artificial neural network model. Okay. And in the late 1950s, this Frank Rosenberg, he added one term, that is bias term, in the neural, this Michelin-Pitts model, and then he called it as a perceptron model. Perceptron means perception. And that perception can be measured in terms of bias, whether if you have some biasness towards some team, for example, I have biasness towards the Mumbai Indians, then I will add the bias, how much bias? Just 25 chances that 25% chances that I will watch the Mumbai Indians match. So that bias is added in the model by this term, this bias term. So this term added in the Michelin-Pitts model, and they call it as a perceptron model, right? So this we can structure of the ANN, as I said, they have this behave like a human. It mimics the human brain, and here we have 3 layers, that is input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. Input layer is a layer which you give the data, images, and your time series, anything we give as input. And these inputs, before giving the inputs, you can process the data also, normalization, transformation, smoothing, and you can decompose. All those things you can do in the input layer. Then we can, and in the input layer, and in the next layer, this information input layers will go to the hidden layer or intermediate layer, or we call it the invisible layers also, and there the information will be processed. This information will be sent to the output layer, right? And in the hidden layer, we have the activation functions. Okay, so this is the structure of the, this about the structures of the neural network, where we have 3 layers: input, hidden, and output layers, right? So usually in time series modeling, we use feed forward network. It means we go from input, hidden, and output in the same, anyway, I mean same direction, that is forward direction. So we call the structure as a feed forward network, right? Since we have, you can see the difference between a simple neural network and deep learning, where you have single layer. This you can see the yellow one, we have only 1 layer here, but in the deep learning you have 4 yellow layers. So these are all, this we call it as a deep learning. And deep learnings are the complex model where you can see the number of parameters becomes more. We have to be very careful in using the deep learning models. If we have more number of data sets, then only it is better to go for the deep learning model. Otherwise, our model will be overestimated, right? This I will deal in the next slide, right? So DL is the generalization of ANN where more than 1 hidden layer are used, which implies that more neurons are used for implementing the model. Okay. So, and formally, we can define the neural network as an artificial neural network is a system composed of many simple elements of processing neuron which operates in a parallel and whose function is determined by the structure of the network, that is hidden layer processing, and the weight of the connection, where the processing is done in each of the nodes or computing the elements, right? This is a formal definition. We have second definition also there. They are saying it is a massively connected internodes. You can see here they are massively connected internodes in both the layers. Okay, then as I said, the synopsis, the cell body, where the information process. This is the most important part of any machine technique, where you give the input and the information will be processed in activation function. We have different activation functions based on the nature of the data. We use activation functions, right? The activation function are the mapping between the inputs and the hidden layer in artificial neural network, determined by the activation functions. Okay, so yeah, these are all the different activation functions for univariate, simple neural network. For deep learning, we have different activation functions called as ELU, ReLU. Then that is, yeah, ELU means that is exponential linear unit, then rectified exponential linear unit. All those things are we use in deep learning, but in the simple neural network, we use these many activation functions. Among these, sigmoidal is the most commonly used activation function for time series modeling, right? And as I said in the times, like in the classical statistical models, where we will estimate the model with maximum likelihood estimation. Like in machine learning also, we will estimate the parameters by using some algorithms. Those algorithms in different models, neural net, machine learning models, different algorithms are used in multi-layer perceptron or feed-forward network. The backpropagation algorithm is the most commonly used, or we call it as the king algorithm in artificial neural network, right? So we can see how backpropagation is propagating back, which means regressing back. What we'll do is usually when you predict with the neural network or neural network, and you find out the error term. See, and first we calculate your predicted value. How we calculate predicted value? We see the next step, I mean second step. And first step is the input, which is the weighted weight. Here we are assigning the weight. Sorry, the weight is if data is follows the normal distribution, you can assign simple weights between 0 to 1. If data is following some beta distribution, some rainfall data is following beta distribution, follow the beta distribution weight and you sum the input, and this is our input. And yi is our target variable. If you are using segmental activation function 1 plus e to the power minus xj, then you will get the output, right? In the next step, we'll calculate the error term. That is, this for e is half of the summation of yi minus yi is the actual value, dj is the desired value, that is the predicted value, and do the square and we'll get the error term. So once you get the error term, like in first and second differentiate, we differentiate the error terms and you add the sum. Those are called as your learning rates, and then you divide, and for the every step you will calculate the second derivative of the error. Wherever it is minimum, then those will be coming into the third iteration. Like that you will continue up to the n number of iteration. Where you get the lowest error, there you will stop. Like that this algorithm will work. This algorithm purely works on the back propagation of the error term, right? This is the most commonly used algorithm in the time series modeling, time series machine learning modeling estimation. Yeah, this is the king algorithm, which is given by Rumelhart et al. They published this paper in, this is a Nature paper. This algorithm is published in the Nature. In depth, if you can go through this paper also. So then coming to the how we can apply the artificial neural network in time series modeling. As I said, we go for the test for the autocorrelation, data under consideration autocorrelation, then we go for the test, and if it is autocorrelated, then we go for further modeling. As I said, whether the data is, as I explained in the linear model, whether the data is linear or non-linear. How you confirm whether the data is linear or non-linear? For that, we have the test called BDS. BDS is the name of the 3 scientists, that is test. It divides the data set into different components at different parts, and you see the part by part whether the data is under consideration linear or non-linear. If you find that the data is non-linear, then we have to go for the time series model. If it is a non-linear model, then ARIMA or any time series models are the best. So we have to go for the ARIMA model, right? And as I said, it is a unsupervised learning where you have the division of the data. Divide the data set into 2 parts: training set and testing set, in the different ratios. Some people they use 90:10, 90:10, 90% data for the training and 10% the data for the testing. And some people they use the 80:20, so that we have to divide the data into training set and validation set. And then we have data normalization. Before giving the data into the input layer, we have to, based on the nature of the data, we have to normalize. We have to, if possible, if situation arise, we have to go for linear transformation, to statistical normalization, simple normalization, Weber decomposition, many things are there, right? So this is how we do apply ANN in the time series modeling, right? And once it's all the steps are done, I mean here also, this also after the model building, we go for the residual diagnosis. If residual diagnosis assumption is satisfied, then we go for the forecasting. Then how we measure the forecasting? Then forecasting will be measured in terms of quantitative, that is mean absolute percentage error, and mean this is one of the criteria, and mean of absolute percentage error terms are not useful when they have the response variables as a 0. For example, insect count, you have response in some of the weeks you have count of 0. Then under such conditions, the MAPs are not used. We can use for root mean square error, RMSE, right? Once you build the model, for example, you have used, in our case, for example, you have used ARIMA, ANN, spatiotemporal, and then ARFIMA model. And among all this, which model is best? Just you cannot say that based on the observed value of the RMS, which you are having the point less, those are the better. Yeah, of course, that is best. But significantly, to test which model is significantly better means we have that, for that we have the test called DM.test, that is DM test. Diebold Merino test. This is available in the available in the forecasting package in R. We can test this also, right? If the error terms are RMS is 10.2 and another one is having the RMS of 10.3, then we can say 10.2 is better. But it is not like the case always, because there should be a significant difference. Sometimes the model which is giving 10.3 RMS may be very simple in the model building. But in the 10.2, which is giving the RMSE of 10.2 less, which is maybe a very complex model, then we obviously prefer the 10.3 because there will not be a significant difference. That significant difference can be calculated based on by using this test. Okay. Yeah, this is about artificial neural network. The time is 12 now. So if I am little fast, you can tell me, or because I have 80 slides, and if you are understanding, I will go with the same speed. And if you have any doubt till then, you can ask me, please.
Rathod, we will take question in the end of the session. So
Okay,
you can continue your lecture till the time.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you. Okay, and in the machine learning, this artificial neural network and support vector machine are the most popular and most widely employed machine learning techniques. And support vector machine, as I said, artificial neural network is most of the time we use it as unsupervised learning, and in the classification task we use it as a supervised learning, but in time series case we use it as an unsupervised modeling. So, but in support vector machine is a supervised modeling where we give both. Most of the cases it is like a regression modeling where we give our target variables also, right? And one major advantage of using support vector machine with my experience is when you have less number of data sets also, you can use support vector machine where what it will do is it will transform your original data sets and to the newer dimension where it will create some artificial variables. Those variables, artificial points, we call it as a support vectors. With the support vectors, we can extend the dimension of the data and we can do the modeling, right? So this support vector machine was earlier mainly it was pioneer. Introduced for classification task. First time it was used for classification problem only. I will explain how precisely the support vector machine will work in classification. I just explain for the 2 minutes. See, this boulder points will designate as a point +1, and the points which without bold they are designated as a -1, and this is our classifier, right? The line is a classifier, and you can classify this in a different combination, right? This many combination of classifier, we can classify these 2 points, right? Any of this would be fine. Any of one can classify your modules, and but which is the best? How we can say which line is better among these for the classification? For that, you can define the margin, right? This is this yellow border or the orange border is our margin. You can say yes, up to the point which is up to this is our best classifier, which fall in between this our best classifier, and we have margin for that, and this margin will be decided based on these points on the support, based on support vector. See, define the margin of a linear classifier as a mean their boundary could be increased by before hitting the data point. With the point which is before hitting this, we can say this is our best classifier, right? Yeah, and for classification, if you use the support vector machine for classification task, we call it as a support vector machine, and if you are using it for the regression task, we call it as a support vector regression. If it is a linear, then we call it as support vector regression. If it is a non-linear, we call it as a non-linear support vector regression, NLSVR. Okay, the basic idea in support vector machine is to transform the original space or variables features space into high dimensional feature space and to carry out the linear classification or linear regression. As I said, it will transform the non-linear or any complex space into linear space, and it will do the nonlinear regression task. Non-linear classification regression in the original space is a linear in nature in the transformed or high dimensional feature space. The transformed space we call it as a high dimensional feature space. Features means your variables or characteristics, right? See, the general idea is the original input space can always be mapped to some higher dimensional feature space where the training set is separable. See, this your non-linear one can be transformed to the your next space, that is your feature space. So you can classify, I mean, you can say that how they are linear or non-linear, and you can classify, I mean, you can transform the data set like this. Okay. And for the linear classification, usually we use linear discriminant function is commonly used for classification in linear task. How would you say that this classify the data? And okay. And see, sometimes what happens if you use a linear classifier, at this point it may be misclassified to the +1, but it is a -1, but it is misclassified to +1. For this, the solution is we have to go for optimizations, right? For that, we have to use the the margin, classifier margin. The maximum margin linear classifier is a linear classifier with the maximum margin. See, this is the classifier which is best, we can say, is the which is having the maximum margin. This is the simplest kind of support vector machine. We call it a linear support vector machine. And these points which are touching the borders, our margin classifier, we call them as a support vectors. Okay. And as I said, it transforms the original space into a feature space. You can see that it denotes the X is the original space. We have X1 and S2. And in the transform, then in R6 transformed space, we have X1, X2, X1 square, X2 square, and combination of those two. And if you if you express this in a quadratic discrimination function, we have A0, A1, X1, A2, X2, A3, X square 1, like that. And this space, I mean, these variables can be transformed to the next feature space as A1, Z1, A2, Z2 in a linear dimension, and we can easily classify and easily, or we can model with the regression modeling easily, right? This is a transformed space. And issues with the transformation is when you have a small number of data, we can easily transform. Like your M becomes M square. If it is a cubic classifier, your M becomes M cube. If it is M to the power N, M to the power, I mean M to the power M, then it is very difficult to the classify. So for that, and your computational cost also increases. For that, the solution is go for the optimal dimension. For the optimal dimension, we have some techniques like in your this linear programming. We used to take the objective function and we used to find out the optimum classifier. So we will minimize the function based on this half of the W to the transform W and goes away, and we maximize our margin and we minimize this error term, and we can maximize our the margin. This is the typical case of our linear programming. Like that also we can find out the optimum classifier in the if it a problem is a linear support vector machine, right? Yeah, if when it is a non-linear support vector machine, I mean your data is a highly complex non-linear term, then we have to go for the kernel functions, right? And those functions we call it as a kernel trick in support vector machine language, where in as in case of neural network, we have seen the activation function which processes the information. Like in support vector machine, we call it as a kernel function, which process the information and give it to the output, I mean output layer, right? So this has a major role in the accuracy of the support vector machine, which function to be used, right? And we have different kind of kernel functions. We have linear. If the problem is simple, we use the linear support vector function. We have polymer of degree d. When your model is linear, we have linear and quadratic to the power 3 to the power 4, like that. And the most commonly used one is the radial basis function, which follows the normal approximations. And this is the most commonly used kernel function in case of support vector machine, right? And you see the expression, it is almost, it looks like a normal distribution expression, okay? And next come to, as we are dealing with the time series model, we use support vector regression. In the year 1997, the support vector machine for the regression problems were developed by WAPNI by introducing this epsilon intensive loss function. And it has been extended to the nonlinear regression estimation problem, and modeling of such problems are called as a nonlinear support vector regression. I said when you have the nonlinear data in the consideration and the regression problem, we call them as a nonlinear support vector regression model. And the general expression of the analysis here is expressed in the following equation, where W is your weight matrix and phi of x is your weight. This W to the power is your weight matrix, and phi of x is your kernel function, and the beta is your I mean it has a model parameter. We have to estimate it. The coefficients of W and beta are estimated from the data minimizing the following regularized risk function. Okay. And this is our regularized risk function. Like in neural network, we use that backpropagation algorithm. Here we just to minimize error function, that is difference between actual and origin. But the major difference in support vector machine and neural network is in support vector machine, along with the actual, this error minimization, we use the principle called as structural risk minimization. In neural network, we use only empirical risk minimization. In the neural network, support vector machine, we use both ERM and SRM, structural risk function. This is the major difference in estimation of neural network and support vector regression, right? So the ERM principle, which minimize the empirical risk, but sometimes it gives a larger confidence interval and no generalization here. It will not give generalization here. It will give error only for the specific iterations, right? This is the popular neural network back proportion works on this principle. To overcome this difficulty, the structural minimization principle has been used to minimize the error function, right? The structural function is intended to minimize the risk function with respect to both empirical as well as the dimension set of the data functions. See, we can see here. And for the regularized function, we use the loss function. See, L is the loss function, and we use the lambda term. Lambda is a probably chosen constant, that is a model parameter. We use this loss function. We choose the loss function differently. For the time series, we use the error loss function, and for classification function, they have some different loss function. Like that, we use the loss functions also, and or this error minimization like RMSE also. And we use some of the constants, and the constant lambda, which controls the trade-off between the smoothness approximation, generalization of confidence intervals, and accuracy of the approximations. Two positive slack variables, zeta and zeta star, are introduced for representing the distance from the actual values. These are called as slack variables. And if you see in the next slide, yeah, see, these are our zeta is. These are how it decides the margin of the border, where up to you can add the slack variables. Like in linear programming variable, you add some artificial slack variable and to fix the margin class, margin of the class apart from the support vector machines, right? And here we have the loss functions zeta I up to zeta I and zeta. Then this weighted points close to the epsilon 2 tend to be support vectors. These are all our support vectors, and we have the model expression, this one, right? Zeta i's are our slack variables. And for any machine learning problems, as I said, any machine learning tools, is user-defined parameters are most important. For example, in neural network also we have parameters like weights, we have learning rate, we have momentum function, we have bias term. In support vector machine also we have cost function, we have lambda, we have the different degrees of the radial basis function. These are all the most important, which defines your accuracy of the model. So building the machine learning model is not so easy. You are just not like a regression statistical models where you just simply run the model and we get the solution for us in the single time. But machine learning is not like that. You have to train the model with the different parameters, and wherever you get the parameters, the errors with the less error with respect to the particular parameters, those you can consider as your best model parameters. Till then, you have to continuously tuning your support vector machine, this artificial neural network. And this is where the intelligence, intelligence of the modeler lies, where how we can run. And if you see, when you run the ARIMA model, if you run today and if you run after 10 days also, it will give the same result. But you run the support vector machine and when you run the artificial neural network now and after 10 minutes also, it will be different results, because the iteration points will be different and every time it will take the random weight, like, right? So for that we have the cross validation techniques where you run your model for 10-fold, 15-fold, 20-fold, and you will just average them wherever they will give you the close result, and you can go for the comparison, right? And this this is the structural risk minimization. And as I said, user defined parameters, cost function lambda and epsilon term. Epsilon term, the final the term which you assign, we assign some term. For example, we assign epsilon 0.01. We run the model till then the error comes to less than 0.01. Till then we run the model. So these three are most important hyperparameters used in the support vector machine. Like you see the keynotes, Pikal madam, she said they use a genetic algorithm for choosing the hyperparameter of the support vector machine. Yeah, that is a very good step where what they will do is they define your they optimize the hyperparameter by using genetic algorithm and support vector machine. Sorry, genetic algorithm and particle sum optimization. And these hyperparameters they will use in the model building. So this is called by using optimization techniques, and you can use the hyperparameters. And that is a very, a very interesting area of research. There also you can use different techniques and you can optimize your hyperparameters, right? And one should define these parameters in such a way that the generalization error is minimum and model accuracy is maximum. So this is the only criteria for choosing the hyperparameters. You have to change the parameters, hyperparameter, till we get the maximum accuracy and minimum error, right? Okay, and this is about the support vector regression. Okay, and coming to the core title of this topic, we have hybrid time series modeling. So what I will do is I will just explain basic of this. By my this talk of some up to 50 slides, you can understand that I dealt with both linear and non-linear models, where you have the series under consideration is linear, and if it satisfies all the diagnostic measures, then we can go for the linear time series model by using ARIMA, STARMA. And when your series is non-linear and it satisfies the respective error terms, the error concept, then you can go for the new machine learning techniques like artificial neural network, support vector machine, then random forest, many others, then your neurophagy, all those things, right? But sometimes what happens, that particular time series contains both the pattern, when it has some linear patterns also and it has non-linear patterns also, then neither of your model will give better result, right? So when you have both the pattern in your data set, both linear and non-linear patterns, then we have to go find out some model which we have to develop the hybrid model, right? So you have to understand this thing. For hybrid modeling, wherever the data pattern contains both linear and non-linear data set contains both linear and non-linear pattern, we have to go for hybrid modeling, and in some people they call it as a two-stage modeling also, right? And this is the major most important concept lies in the hybrid modeling, right? See, I will read out the major drawback of any linear time series along with the spatio-temporal time series model. They are presumption of linearity. Hence, no non-linear pattern can be recognized by these models. And sometimes the time series often contains both linear and non-linear pattern components. Under such condition, either ARIMA or PIMA, STARMA, or artificial neural network, support vector machine, or any machine learning techniques are adequate in modeling and forecasting, right? Sorry. And to overcome that, we have the hybrid modeling. In the first phase, what we do is, first phase, we'll develop the model with any linear time series model. For example, ARIMA model, ARIMA or RPMA or STARMA model. We fit the model. In the next phase, what we do is, when you fit the model, as I said, we have to go for the diagnostic checking. In the diagnostic checking, if the error terms are comes to be non-random, I mean they are random in nature, then we stop the model. And if the error terms are, it means the error is not having any information, we leave out the error term and we will finalize the model and we will go for the forecasting comparison of predictions, right? That is our single model building. And sometimes what happens, after you test the diagnosis and it comes as a significant, when you go for box space test, the residuals are significant. It means it has some information. So if your residuals are square terms, then we go for the most popular model is our Kac model. And when your residuals are more complex, it does not have any detectable relationship or more complex relationship. Those conditions we have to go for the machine learning models. And once the residuals are significant, we have to test whether those residuals are linear or non-linear. So for that, we have a test called as BDS test. If you apply that test, it will whether it will give BDS, result of the test, and the BDS test is also significant. Then only you have to go for the machine learning model, right? So these two are most important. Once you get the model, you have to go for the box diagnostic checking. In the diagnostic checking, if it becomes significant, then we have to apply the BDS test. In the BDS test, if it becomes non-linear, then we have to go for the machine learning models, right? And this whole methodology can be expressed in this equation where LHT is a linear term, NHT is your represents the non-linear term, right? Then this then after fitting this non-linear model with the non-linear term with residuals with any of your neural network or support vector machine, this residuals will add into the linear predicted values of the earlier model, and we both sum up and we call it as a hybrid model. The fitted values obtained from these two models are separately summed, right? Okay. And these are all the some tasks of, I mean, some different combinations of hybrid modeling. What we will do is first we have the actual series. We deal with the ARIMA model. If the residuals are comes into significant and non-linear, then we fit the this time delay neural network for the residual time and sum the both. We have the final forecast. This is this schematic representation of ARIMA time delay neural network hybrid methodology. This is most popular hybrid methodology, first time given by Zhang in the year early 2000. This is the most popular methodology, and many people still know they are using this ARIMA and ANN combination, right? And next we have ARIMA and support vector regression. For linear combination, linear part we use ARIMA, and for non-linear part we have support vector regression. Then it will give the ARIMA analysis hybrid methodology. And next we have ARPIMA. In one of our paper we use ARPIMA. In the place of ARIMA we use ARPIMA and use ANN here, and you could do the sum and then final forecast. This is ARPIMA ANN hybrid methodology. Okay. And next we have ARIMA. In the place of, when you have this exogenous variable, in the place of ARIMA you use ARIMAX, and you use either ANN or SVM, then we call it as ARIMAX ANN SVM hybrid methodology, right? Like that we have for special temporal, this is published on a published paper, where we have in the place of your ARIMA model, you use special temporal Starma model, and you check for linear part, and for non-linear part here we use both ANN and SVM also. And this we call as a spatial temporal time series hybrid methodology, right? And one of the work we use a wavelet combination also, wavelet ANN. In the first linear part, we divide the series into different combinations, smooth, I mean decompose the series, and the second part we combine with the different models, the ANN with sum. This is also wavelet ANN hybrid methodology, right? And yeah, this is about the modeling. And the one thing, this is most important here, we have to understand that this is called, we call it as a no free lunch theorem. Free lunch theorem. It states that no single statistical machine learning algorithm is universally best. We cannot say that artificial intelligence or machine learning techniques are always better. It is not at all the case. If your data is following 100% linearity and all the assumptions, ARIMA model is better than your machine learning or ANN model. There you can have estimation, robustness, everything. So we always cannot say that this ANN is better, SVM is better, that is better, that better. It always refers to the data points or data set under consideration. We go through the second line here. I have written, given two statistical machine learning techniques A and B, there will be as many as situation in which A is worse than B, and as many as situation in which B is worse than A. You cannot say A is better or B is better. It is always depends on the nature of the data. So for any, modeler, we have to always understand that, or any beginner of the time series or any statistical modeling, we always cannot say the particular model is better. You should understand the nature of the data and you can build a model, right? This is most important theorem in time series modeling. Okay. And yeah, coming to the conclusion. Before conclusion, I have some examples or illustration. These are all our papers only. What we have done is modeling and forecasting of oil seed production of India through artificial intelligence technique. Here I have applied this ARIMA artificial neural network and support vector machine, and among these support vector machine is performed better for forecasting of the oil seed production. And in second we have I developed the hybrid. This is my PhD work. Hybrid time series models for forecasting banana production. We have hybrid of for banana forecasting. Hybrid combination of ARIMA and the support vector machine performed better compared to all other combinations. And this is one more published paper where we use, as I showed in the earlier slide, the integration of Fourier transform with ANN and WNN for time series forecasting and application to monsoon rainfall, where this integration of ANN and WNN performed with respect to classical ANN and WNN model. And this is ARIMAX model. ARIMAX support vector machine performed better for forecasting of the rice seed using the exogenous variables in this paper. Then and again we use a hybrid linear time series approach for long-term forecasting for the crop yield also. Here also our support vector machine performed better, support vector machine with artificial neural network. And as I said, the long memory time series, in this paper we have used ARPIMA model using maximum or MOWT transformation and ANN for forecasting agriculture commodity price. Here we use mustard price for it follows the long memory property. And the combination of ARPIMA ANN performed better as compared to single models of ARPIMA and ANN. right? And this is again my PhD paper where we have applied different combination of models for mango and banana. Again, combination of in some way, some point, the some data we have got RIMA ANN better, and some part we have got RIMA SVM, what the better combination. And this is one of our PhD student paper. This is published recently in Theoretical Applied Climatology. And where we have done developed a hybrid spatiotemporal modeling. We applied this model in the rainfall forecasting, where we taken West Bengal data, where I think we have taken here 7 places. In all the 7 places, the data were specially correlated. Then we applied this model, and this paper is published. Like that, we have, I mean, some papers are under communication also. And yeah, coming to the conclusion, I will conclude now. The linear time series models such as ARIMA, STARMA, ARFIMA, or space-time models are unable to characterize the nonlinear temporal or spatiotemporal relationships. And a linear approximation to that also sometimes gives a mixed, mixed results. And alternatively, ML or machine learning algorithm model to the nonlinear pattern in the time series data can be used. And both linear and nonlinear models, they are promising in their own modeling tasks, but they cannot go with the one another, right? So to overcome this problem, we can develop the hybrid time series methodology, and we can do the better modeling. So yeah, with this I can conclude. And just a minute, and one more thing. I have some suggested papers for any time series modelers. There is one paper, the Gougier and Hindman paper. Hindman is a very popular person in time series modeling in R also. They have published one paper called 25 Years of Time Series Forecasting internationally. This is a very good journal, International Journal of Forecasting. For any beginner in time series, you have to go through this paper where you can understand what are the different models, context of time series, and how to begin for the time series, right? So then we have this for neural network or artificial. We first go with this paper. This is a very good paper for this neural network modeling in time series. The second paper. Then we have for support vector machine. We have this third paper, and these are all some one or two paper hours. And for the any time series, the Box and Jenkinson are the most dominated paper in this class, right? These are the suggested for you people. And one more thing, in the most of the lectures I deliver, I used to demonstrate the practicals also. Since here is a webinar, I have not demonstrated, only have delivered the lecture. And these are all the, you people can use, these are all R packages for different class for time series, basic stationarity and differentiation. You can use T series, and forecast package for non-linearity test. You can use F nonlinear. For parameter significance identification, you can use LM test, neural net, ELMR, NNF. These are all neural network packages. E1071 you can use for support vector machine. STARMA you can use for spatiotemporal modeling. And the SPDEP you can use for creating the weight matrix, and FRAGDEP you can use for your ARFIMA model, right? Okay, this is all, madam. This is all about my talk. And if you have any, any doubts, you can ask. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rathod. There are a few questions from audience side. So
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
First question is there any book for non-agricultural background to begin learning this ANN and other models, and throw some knowledge how this will help to farmers in particularly?
Yeah, for the yes, ma'am. For the beginners, what we can say is there are many books. Again, those books are written in terms of this machine learning or computer language only. But for the time series, for time series context, if you want to read, then this Zhang paper is very good. Apart from that, some books are available. Those books are available in Amazon. I have the books in my Almira. I have purchased. If exactly I do not remember the author name, I can share the author name later. Those books are available in Amazon. Those books you can purchase. Those are the Indian authors only, and you can read those. You can begin with that. This one. And before that, what you can do is, in YouTube you have many lectures. IIT Kharagpur, one Das Gupta sir's lectures are there, and you can register for the NPTEL. Many free classes are there. You can register for that. They are very good compared to book. First, for beginners, it is always better to go for the YouTube videos. There they have explained very nicely. All IIT Kharagpur lectures are available in the YouTube. you can go with those. And you have that Coursera also nowadays. Many classes are online. Those you can go. You can read some books also. Many literatures are available. Many websites are there. You can download the free books also. And coming to the farmers application task, see sir, this machine learning and time series modeling they're all always we do it for the this policy makers or the people who are working in the prediction part, right? So what happens whenever the farmer is requires some information whether I have to go for spray or not next week, they usually ask the expert which are available. And some farmers who are all known earlier decisions were not there. They based on the nature, I mean past experience, they will say that yes, tomorrow there will be a rain, or tomorrow there may not be a rain, like that. So for farmers, the person who is giving the scientist or the subject matter specialist who is working in KVK, he will say that yes, tomorrow there will be a rain, but he might have used some models for the for which he is saying. For example, he might have used machine regression or time series or ANN, right? So while using telling him the forecast, he can use. You have to see all these things. You have to see the nature of the data. If it is a linear, you have to go for ARIMA. If it is non-linear, you have to go for machine learning techniques. If it is a combination of both, he has to go for the combination of both. Then you can he can tell exactly, yes, this much 95% confidence interval, I can say tomorrow there will be a rain. Like that he can tell. We cannot directly apply AN in the farmers context. We can say for the policymakers, we can use these techniques.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Rathore, there is one more question. I think you have already answered in your presentation. Any particular software to make this model? Would you like to recommend any particular software?
Yeah, yes, there are nowadays. Yes, ma'am. Nowadays, when we in Priti, we are all using neural network. We use in our PhD time. We use MATLAB. Though that was not a free software, we borrowed from somewhere like IIT institutes and all, and we use a machine learning. Neural network for building the neural network in MATLAB. And that too, MATLAB is a very good here where you are just, it is a geographical user interface based where you can just simply click and which combination of activation functions you want, and then you can build the model. But it is not in a free software. Like that, you have many paid softwares. You have Statistica, you have even nowadays SAS is also this ANN is available. Even you have SPSS also. But I always suggest you go for, since you are all a student or a young learner, you can go for R always. R is always better, where you can develop your own models also, and your R is freely available. You can download the code behind the program, and you can edit the code also. So I recommend better you go for R only.
Okay. Okay. One more question, Rathore.
Yes, ma'am.
How to give assurance for minimum production price to farmers?
This okay, this I'm not in position to answer this question. Better Pundir sir and Preeti madam, they can answer this, because as a modeler and all, if the price assurance, if they have any statistical or data in the numerical form, I can say with this model, this model is going to happen, and I can say this, I can do the price. But whatever I do the model, the data should be available in the numerical form. Then only I can say the assurance. Otherwise, this marketing people, they only better and they will answer.
But we cannot assure people with 100%, and we are predicting everything. Yes. So we can give them a surety by some percentage. We as a statistician, 99%. More than that, we cannot assure by 100% to them at whatever prediction we are giving to them. So yes. And Rathore, one more question is, what is your experience about your own prediction? Is this really used by farmer and policyholders?
Yeah, I will tell you. See, when I was in ISRI, Dr. Kane Singh was part of that FASL program, and you can see this Indian Department of Meteorology. Earlier, they were using our Ranjana Madam's methodology, that is weather-based forecasting model, and they developed the indices, and they were using only the linear regression and ARIMA model. Nowadays, when they revised the methodology and they came to ISRI, nowadays they are using ARIMA and ANN models also. So this is really, and nowadays many people they are using, even in that one center is there in Delhi, MNCFC, they are also using machine learning techniques for forecasting. And nowadays people are using this for the forecasting purpose.
Okay. Okay.
But it is not in the fully this one. And even in this disease predictions also in our institute, we have also developed an app for the this rice blast disease identification. And many people they have even that CIPRI they are using for potato blight disease. Sorry, Kufri Institute they are using for potato blight, and even in CFET Ludhiana they are using for this loss estimation. Many people they are using this for the nowadays using in agriculture.
Okay. Okay. So, Pundesh sir, would you like to say something to Dr. Santosh Rathod?
And actually, Dr. Rathod Saab, I personally got the maximum benefit, but to some extent I was listening. But it is a wonderful thing. And even though as far as this content is concerned, it's very, very important, though we don't have a strength in this area, frankly speaking, though Dr. Preeti and Rucha, they have some strength. We have something towards others. You had indicated something to some extent, we know towards that historical data, time series data, projections kind of things. But I think learning from you, maybe your lecture or maybe this kind of even in the morning also from the speakers or keynote speaker. So we have to do a lot. So I think there is need for a hybrid models. There is no solution of other things. And it's very, very important. We are looking toward the robust price projections or maybe the projections. Let us say projections. Directly we cannot make price projections from here. So I think these hybrid models or methodologies are very, very important. For that's the fundamental knowledge, and the people who are experts who are doing work like you, they are the best thing for us. And I think these are the only things. It was wonderful taken up by this maybe the audience and we for us, and we'll be disturbing a little you maybe a little later. And that's fine, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and giving this benefit of your expertise and experience. Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Rathod. Thank you for explaining in the morning session. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Durga ma'am, already explained us how we can use AI and machine learning technique, where we can use AI and machine learning technique in the agriculture. And in your session, we get to know how these techniques could we implement when we actually want to go through the data and information. So thank you for explaining those techniques, Rathod. And thank you very much for coming in this webinar. So we are at the end of this technical session first. So dear audience, please join us at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time for our technical session 2. And this is all for now. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rathod. Thank you very much.